Hare Krishna and welcome to the Bhagavatam for the independently thoughtful. Shri Radha Govindadasi and Kanti here with you here today. Today I wanted to summarize whatever we studied so far, just so you can catch up. So we are studying the first chapter of the 7th canto, and this is a very, very relevant and interesting topic. The Supreme Lord is impartial and how he is equal to everyone. We studied until verse number 18. We saw how Parikshit Maharaj in the beginning of this chapter asks Sukadeva Goswami, after this whole pastime between Indra and Vitrasura, Parikshit Maharaj wants to understand, why is the Lord partial? Why does he appear to be partial? And then there is the beautiful explanation speaking about the goodness and how the sages and demigods are primarily ruled by the mode of goodness, and Yudhishthir Maharajas and Yajasviya sacrifice comes up in this topic. And we ended with verse number 18 where, no, not 18, what was it? Verse number 22, yeah. So we also touched upon how Shishupala and Dantavakra, they didn't go to hell, but rather they actually got liberated. And we stopped at Shukadeva Goswami asking, saying, after hearing the request of Maharaj Yudhishthir, Narada Muni, the most powerful spiritual master, who knew everything, was pleased. And thus he replied in the presence of everyone taking part in the yagya. I did want to read something from one of the classes where's my phone? One of the classes of Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj. I'm just going to quickly read it for you. It's a very relevant point, and I thought I will share with you today. So, it looks like the Lord sometimes tends to favor demons, rakshasas, yakshas, or ghosts, the representative of Tamaguna. And sometimes he seems to side with demigods. It depends on what kind of energy prevail at the moment. For example, now we live in Kali Yuga, and it is difficult to see that the Lord favors devotees in Kali Yuga. It looks like he favors demons who are in the mode of passion and ignorance. And we can see that these people experience prosperity, sense enjoyment, they are powerful. And devotees, on the other hand, appear to be poor and they suffer at the hands of influence of demoniac people or demonic tendencies. And yeah, it's a very interesting point that Maharaj was bringing up, that depending on the time, and I was like, it was mind-blowing, the time factor, kala antargata, kala niyamaka, kala atita trikalagnya. Krishna has this amazing way of playing with time and controlling time and maintaining time, because his purposes are not, he doesn't adjust to time. Rather, time adjusts to his purposes. So although it may appear, especially in Kali Yuga, even within our organization, sometimes it may appear that people who are not qualified are in power and position, and those people who are nice may feel neglected or mistreated. And then we may see that materialistic people who don't worship the Lord, they are flourishing, they're wealthy, they're opulent. And then we may think that the Lord is favoring. But Kanti Prabhu yesterday also brought up that point, that it's not always that opulence is not an indication always of Lord's mercy. Sometimes it can be karma, which again is connecting to time. Sometimes in our lives, we may be going through tough periods in our life, Saturn period, Rahu period, astrologically speaking, or times where Krishna decides that this is the time for us to go through certain consequences of something that we did in the past. And it's not that the Lord is not favoring us. The Lord is still favoring us. But the difference is that if we're not in faithful mentality, we say, oh, this person did so much devotional service, and still you see Krishna gave him this disease, or Krishna gave him this ill health. That's why we're not qualified to pray like Kunti Marani, we're not praying, asking the Lord to give us difficulties, because as long as we can see and hear, and we're not suffering from coronavirus, and we're not hospitalized, and we have our legs working, hands working, we're able to perform that much devotional service. Imagine having some serious problems, we won't even be able to do that. So we are not qualified to pray in that way, asking for calamities to come. But the truth is that great devotees like Parikshit Maharaj or Kunti Devi, great devotees, they see even calamities as the mercy of the Lord, and they want it, because they say in our life pain should be more than pleasure, because when there is more pleasure we are not as grateful, but when there is more, like when there's experience of pain, then we remember the Lord, we call out to the Lord, we take shelter of the Lord. But there has to be some balance, because if it's too painful also, like I said, if our body is aching too much and we're suffering too much from ill health, we cannot call to the Lord in our position, in current position. So this is a very important point I wanted to bring up before we go further into what Shukadeva Goswami is going to bring up. It's not this. Okay. So we start from verse number 22, 23, 33. Shri Narada Uvacha Nindana-stava satkara Nyakararatham kalevaram Pradhana parayo rajan Avivekena kalpitam. The great sage Sri Narada Ji said, O king, blasphemy and praise, chastisement and respect are experienced because of ignorance. The body of the conditioned soul is planned by the Lord for suffering in the material world through the agency of the external energy. In Bhagavad Gita 1861, it is said, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantrarudhani mayaya. Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities, who is seated as on a machine made of material energy. A material body is manufactured by the external energy according to the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The conditioned soul, being seated on this machine, wanders throughout the universe, and because of his bodily conception of life, he only suffers. Actually, the suffering of being blasphemed and the enjoyment of being praised, the acceptance of good welcome, or of chastisement by harsh words are felt in the material conception of life. But since the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not material, but Satchidananda Vigraha, he is unaffected by insults or greetings, blasphemy or prayers. Being always unaffected and complete, he does not feel extra pleasure when offered nice prayers by the devotee, although the devotee benefits by offering prayers to the Lord. Indeed, the Lord is very kind to his so-called enemy, because one who always thinks of the personality of Godhead as an enemy also benefits, although he thinks of the Lord adversely. If a conditioned soul, thinking of the Lord as an enemy or a friend, somehow or other becomes attached to the Lord, he receives great benefit. Want to comment?
Yes, here Narada Muni is starting to develop his argument, which will be expanded in the next few verses. And this is very important also for us. We feel the blasphemy or the praise of the body and its attributes, because of ignorance. Avivekena, lack of viveka, lack of discrimination. And kalpita means created or imagined. So because we identify with the material body, we feel when that material body is praised or is dishonored. Somebody says, oh, you're ugly, And we feel, oh, we are ugly, like that. Obviously, if somebody says, if we don't identify with the body, somebody says, oh, you're ugly, then who is ugly? And not his body. It's like somebody doesn't like the color of my t-shirt. It's like, okay, so what? I'm not this t-shirt. But Krishna is not the body, and it's perfectly, I mean, no, Krishna is the body, but is not covered by a material body, so it's not affected by material praise or material dishonor. And Srila Prabhupada makes this point, how yes, the devotee benefits by offering prayers to the Lord. And this will be the theme of the next few verses. Srila Prabhupada concludes, if a conditioned soul, thinking of the Lord as an enemy or as a friend, somehow or other becomes attached to the Lord, he receives great benefit. So this will be the theme and flavor of the next few verses. How attachment to Krishna in any form is absolute, Krishna being absolute, and therefore is beneficial.
Yeah, I also wanted to add about, in Uddhava Gita, when Krishna explains to Uddhava, this is the theme of Uddhava Gita actually. He explains the difference between yoga and bhoga. Essentially, we are all yogis, bhakti yogis, trying to perform bhakti yoga. And it's so relevant for us because as a yoga, what does a yogi do? Yogi does everything for the Lord, for the pleasure of the Lord. And then he's in union with the will of the Lord. So we are always in alignment with God's will. That's a yogi. And if we are not becoming yogis, if we are not able to behave like a yogi, we are bogis. And bogi is a person who tries to enjoy for themselves by showing off, or when we perform devotional service for others, like to show that, oh, others are appreciating me. But that is not at all yoga. It's actually bhoga. And the whole theme of the Bhagavad Gita is also about Krishna saying that if we are bogis, if bhoga is your goal, roga is certain. Roga means disease. And what disease? Material disease. So, Kanti Prabhu often says this point that, as a woman, I have a tendency sometimes to think, oh, that person is enjoying better or is in a better position or better. And then he always says, but you don't know what's going on in their mind. And the anxiety of looking good and being right and always being fitting in and getting that image always, keeping that image always, it can be such a suffering. So the point is that when I'm trying to do devotional service for others, for example, sometimes I'm thinking whether maybe it is classes or how many people watch it, or, determining the success of something based on that, then that is bhoga. And then that's going to give me a roga, which is the roga of lamentation, of anxiety, because that's the nature of the material world. If I do yoga, I'll be liberated. If I do it really for Krishna and not get entangled with all this conception of bodily life. ನಾನು ನನ್ನದು ಎಂಬ ನರಕದೊಳಗೆ ಬಿದ್ದು ನೀನೇ ಗತಿಯೆಂದು ನಂಬಿದ ದಾಸನೇ. So the purpose of life is not to look like I'm a good mridanga player, or I'm a good singer, or I'm a good class giver, I'm very good at writing books or whatever. The goal is actually to become the servant of the Lord, that even if nobody is watching me, I'm actually doing this for Krishna. That gives me happiness and pleasure and fulfillment. That gives us satisfaction. And that's the tapasya. The tapas needs to be done to sacrifice. Tyaga and tapas are essential for this goal of going away from bhoga and going really into yoga. And that gives, and the other day I was telling my husband, Radhanath Maharaj was here and I wanted to give him something. And I was asking him, what can I give Maharaj? He has everything. And then Kanti Prabhu said, no, he doesn't have anything, but he doesn't need anything. That was like a aha moment for me, light bulb moment for me. That's the point of being a yogi. A yogi is somebody who may not have anything, no power, no position, no status, no wealth, no women, no followers, but he doesn't need any of that. My God, this realization has made my day. And I've been meditating on this and writing about it. Tomorrow also I'm going to give a class, and this will be the main theme tomorrow. This point about how I can become liberated is lowering the expectation about how people treat me or how I should gain position in this material world. Let me see if there's a question in the chat box. I see something. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes. So the point is to work not on externally improving my situation, but the point is not to adjust external circumstances, but the point is to work on my internal state of satisfaction. I do have something else to say, but I guess it'll come on another purport. Should we continue, or you want to say something?
I just wanted to check, we are keeping this music. Is it disturbing? Is it covering the voice? Or maybe you can't hear it at all? Please have a comment if it's okay, or it's too much. Should we put it down, or should we remove it? Let us know, please.
Maybe you can just give a thumbs up. Some echo is there. Okay. Okay. We'll stop it then. All right. Continuing. You want to say something else, or we can go? Anybody else has any questions about this very important point? Yes, there's. That's okay. It's okay. There is some echo, so I'm going to switch off the music. Any questions or comments? It's a very, it was like a mind-shifting, perspective-shifting point for me, that all my suffering and not enjoying Krishna consciousness comes from my expectation to be a bogi. And then I'm suffering the roga and I become a rogi. You know, these are all rhyming: yoga, boga, roga. So that's the cycle. If we don't do proper yoga, then we become bogis, and then we become rogis. Rogi means somebody who's deceased. That's why the Uddhava Gita, the point is more pain and little pleasure is better. When there is more pleasure and less pain, we forget the Lord and we become so full of ourselves, and it will lead us to the boga mentality, and immediately after that comes roga. We can't tolerate others progressing, we become jealous, we become insecure, we're not able to appreciate our qualitative connection with the Lord. Okay, if you don't have any questions, then we can go further. Himsa tad abhimanena Dandaparushayor yatha vaishamya iha bhutanam mamahamiti parthiva. My dear king, the conditioned soul, being in the bodily conception of life, considers his body to be his self and considers everything in relationship with the body to be his. Because he has this wrong conception of life, he is subjected to dualities like praise and chastisement. I want to pause here. In the Uddhava Gita, Uddhava tells Krishna that it's so difficult to get away from this me and mine. Krishna, it sounds very nice. He says, whatever you're saying is so nice, but to practically apply, to not think that this is me and this is mine and my reputation and I did this, it's so hard to give it up, Uddhava says. It's a small purport. Only when a conditioned soul accepts the body as himself does he feel the effects of chastisement or praise. Then he determines one person to be his enemy, another his friend, and wants to chastise the enemy and welcome the friend. This creation of friends and enemies is a result of one's bodily conception of life. There was something I wanted to add about. Concept often reminds about this point that if you whenever I get excited about something and I'm very happy, he's like, be careful, Shirade. If you try to enjoy this fame or this praises that's coming, when the opposite comes, you're going to suffer so much. So that's why I said, that's why Kunti says, please give me more adversities, because the more adversities are there, we are humble, we are on a grounded level, we're more realistic. As soon as praises come, we become puffed up. That's why it's called puffed up. Puffed up is there's no substance, it's just flat. You want to say something about that? I learned that from Prabhu often, and whenever he tells me, don't become too happy, because when the opposite of praise comes, you're going to suffer a lot.
Yeah, this is a general principle of life. I was reading once of that famous author, Salman Rushdie, that he was advising a younger author. And the younger author was very happy that his book became bestseller, was very much praised by critics. And this older author said, be careful, because if you feel so elated, so euphoric when they praise your book, you feel very bad when they don't praise your book, when they pen your book, when they criticize it, something's missing, this and that. So obviously, if we should take seriously the feedback we get, especially from people we trust, people who are senior, people who are intelligent or prepared in that particular subject. At the same time, we are not doing this, whatever we are doing, we're not doing to get praise. We're doing as an offering. Sometimes the devotees, I observe this. Sometimes the devotees get confused and they say, we are not supposed to be attached to the results. But it's not like that. The devotees should be attached to the results. The difference is that they should not be attached to enjoying the results. See, what are the results? If you're distributing books, it's the number of books. If you're running a restaurant, then you're the number of plates that you sell, and so on and so forth. If you're doing deity worship, is the cleanliness, is the punctuality, is the gorgeousness of the arrangement of the decorations. So if you're a head pujari, you should be attached that offerings are on time, offerings are opulent, the place is clean, and so on. You need to be attached. That's your service, basically, to be attached to the result. But you should not be attached to enjoy the result. In other words, oh, the temple is clean, the offerings is on time, the dresses are opulent. You should not, yes, you should not expect or depend on people praising you. So the pleasure of the devotee is in the offering of the results, but to offer results, there must be results. So,
That's right.
So this is sometimes devotees get confused. No, we should be attached. If you're writing an article, you should be attached that this article is solid grammatically, solid in terms of philosophy, solid in terms of readability. It should be pleasurable to read and so on. It should be logical, should be properly developed, but you should be attached that this product should not be attached to be glorified because of that article. You should be happy if you can offer that in the broader Sankirtan movement, because you're offering a glorification of certain aspects of the Lord through that particular article.
And it's a challenge. It's not something that comes easy. But if we associate with devotees who remind us of that, and if we are in a sangha where we help each other to look at our intentions and look at why we are suffering, and maybe the causes are because we're attached to enjoying the result. Okay, can go to the next verse. Anytime you have a question, please do put it in the chat box, or you can unmute and speak. Yannibhaddo bhimano yam tadvadat parinam vadha tatha na yasya kaivalyad abhimano khilatmana parasya dama karturhi himsa ke nasya kalpyate. Because of the bodily conception of life, the conditioned soul thinks that when the body is annihilated, the living being is annihilated. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is a supreme controller, the super soul of all living entities. Because he has no material body, he has no false conception of I and mine. It is therefore incorrect to think that he feels pleasure or pain when blasphemed or offered prayers. This is impossible for him. Thus, he has no enemy and no friend. When he chastises the demons, it is good for their good. And when he accepts the prayers of the devotees, it is for their good. He is affected neither by prayers nor by blasphemy. Backward. Because of being covered by material bodies, the conditioned souls, including even greatly learned scholars and falsely educated professors, all think that as soon as the body is finished, everything is finished. This is due to their bodily conception of life. Krishna has no such bodily conception, nor is his body different from his self. Therefore, since Krishna has no material conception of life, how can he be affected by material prayers and accusations? Krishna's body is described herewith as Kaivalya, non-different from himself. Since everyone has a material bodily conception of life, if Krishna had such a conception, what would be the difference between Krishna and the conditioned soul? Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita are accepted as final because he does not possess a material body. As soon as he has a material body, he has 4 deficiencies. But since Krishna does not possess a material body, he has no deficiencies. He is always spiritually conscious and blissful. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha. His form is eternal, blissful knowledge. Satchidananda Vigraha, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa, and Kaivalya are the same. Krishna can expand himself as Paramatma in the core of everyone's heart. In Bhagavad Gita 13.3, this is confirmed. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Lord is the Paramatma, the Atma or super self of all individual souls. Therefore, it must naturally be concluded that he has no defective bodily conceptions. Although situated in everybody's body, he has no bodily conception of life. He is always free from such conceptions, and thus he cannot be affected by anything in relation to the material body of the jiva. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 16:19, Tanaham vishta kruran samsareshu naradhaman kshipyam ajashram shubhan asurishva eva yonishu. Those who are envious, who are the lowest among men, are cast by me into the ocean of material existence, into various demonic species of life. Whenever the Lord punishes persons like demons, however, such punishment is meant for the good of the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul, being envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, may accuse him, saying, Krishna is bad, Krishna is a thief, and so on. But Krishna, being kind to all living entities, does not consider such accusations. Instead, he takes account of the conditioned soul's chanting of Krishna, Krishna so many times. He sometimes punishes such demons for one life for putting them in a lower species. But then, when they have stopped accusing him, they are liberated in the next life because of chanting Krishna's name constantly. Blaspheming the Supreme Person, blaspheming the Supreme Lord or his devotee is not at all good for the conditioned soul. But Krishna is very kind, punishes the conditioned soul in one life for such sinful activities, and then takes him back home, back to Godhead. The vivid example for this is Vritrasura, who was formerly Chitraketu Maharaj, a great devotee. Because he derided Lord Shiva, the foremost of all devotees, he had to accept the body of a demon called Vritra. But then he was taken back to Godhead. Thus, when Krishna punishes a demon or conditioned soul, he stops that soul's habit of blaspheming him. And when the soul becomes completely pure, the Lord takes him back to Godhead. Want to comment something? Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, it was reading right there. The Lord is, no, not that one. 9:29. That Krishna is not, he is not never partial to anyone. He is equal to everyone. But because of imperfect vision, influenced by material qualities, one imposes material qualities upon Krishna. When one does so, he becomes a muda, a fool. So Even this morning in our Bhagavatam class, we were discussing how some people, they conclude that, oh, Krishna is punishing, oh, even though somebody did so much devotional service, why Krishna is putting them through difficulty. That's a material way of seeing Krishna. But when we have transcendental vision and we understand that Krishna is beyond the modes, he's not conquered by the modes. It is said that even Brahma and Shiva, they are always on the Shuddha Sattva platform. But sometimes, once in a while, they also come a little bit into Rajas. But Krishna never gets affected by the modes. How can he be partial? And I wanted to say something about friendship. Krishna is the best friend of all living entities. Hridesha Arjuna Tishtati. It's so incredible when Uddhava asks Krishna also. Uddhava says, like, how is it possible that you're in everybody's heart, Krishna? Uddhava asks. So Krishna is really the true friend of all living entities. So how can we ever feel, oh, that person is bad? Krishna is in their heart. It's just that they're not allowing Krishna to take control of their life, but still Krishna is in their heart. So that's why an exalted devotee, advanced devotee is able to like feel compassion for everyone. And remember, let's remember, Krishna is the best friend to all of us. The world that we are in, this material world, is not our home. Our home is there in Golok Vrindavan. We're just here temporarily. It's like an airplane. Just take a seat. You don't start, like Prabhu said yesterday, Kantevra was saying about, we don't like start adjusting the seats and changing the window covers or to ask for a different air hostess. We're just there for a few hours. Similarly, we are also in this world for a few hours. Like if you're staying in a rented home, you're not going to get into, oh, let me fix the wall in this way and let me change the ceiling and let me paint it. No, when we're rented, when we are in a rented house, we do the minimum possible. So we are in a rented house, but still we become very affected by whatever is happening with this rented house. And rented house basically is the mind. Another analogy that helps me very much is also to understand that, you know, when you lock and you open, it's the same key. The same key I lock my house with, the same key I open with, right? It's not that there is one key for locking and another key for opening. And so similarly, actually, our home is there, but somehow or another we have forgotten we have lost the key. We've lost the key, and we are here in this material world trying to settle. But our home is there, and just because of losing the sense of the key, we are lost our mind in wrongful thoughts and wrongful actions, which is keeping us entangled. So sometimes we have not lost the key, but we have lost our minds into things that are trivial, not important for us. So the point is to put our mind in the right place, put our mind in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, we'll go to the next verse. Tasmad vairānubhandena nirvairena bhayena va snehat kamena vayu punjat katanchin nikshate pratak. Therefore, by enmity or by devotional service, by fear, or by affection or by lusty desire, by all of these or any of them, if a conditioned soul somehow or other concentrates his mind upon the Lord, the result is the same. For the Lord, because of his blissful position, is never affected by enmity or friendship. This is Ajamil example, right? Ajamil, he thought he saw the boy and remembered Narayana, and Krishna said, "Whoa, there you go." Purport. From this verse, one should not conclude that because Krishna is unaffected by favorable prayers or unfavorable blasphemy, one should therefore blaspheme the Supreme Lord. This is not the regulated principle. Bhakti Yoga means anukulyena Krishnanushilanam. One should serve Krishna very favorably. This is the real injunction. Here it is said that although an enemy thinks of Krishna unfavorably, the Lord is unaffected by such anti-devotional service, as he offers his benediction even to Shishupala and similarly inimical conditioned souls. This does not mean, however, that one should be inimical toward the Lord. The stress is given to the favorable execution of devotional service, not purposeful blasphemy of the Lord. It is said, Nindam Bhagavata Shrinmams Tatparyasa Janasya va Tato na paiti yasopi yatyadha sukritachyuta. One who hears blasphemy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotees should immediately take action or should leave. Otherwise, he will be put into hellish life perpetually. There are many such injunctions. Therefore, as a regulative principle, one should not be unfavorable toward the Lord, but always favorably inclined toward him. Shishupala's achievements of oneness with the Supreme Lord was different because Jaya and Vijaya, from the very beginning of their material existence, were ordained to treat the Supreme Lord as an enemy for 3 lives and then return home back to Godhead. Jaya and Vijaya inwardly knew that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they purposefully became his enemies to be delivered from the material life. From the very beginning of their lives, they thought of Krishna as an enemy. And even though blaspheming Lord Krishna, they chanted the holy name of Krishna constantly, along with their inimical thoughts. Thus, they were purified because of chanting the holy name of Krishna. It is to be understood that even a blasphemer can be freed from sinful activities by chanting the holy name of the Lord. Certainly, therefore, freedom is assured for a devotee who is always favorable to the service of the Lord. This will be clear from the following verse. By rapt attention fixed upon Krishna, one is purified, and thus one is delivered from material life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has very nicely explained the words bhayena, which means by fear. When the gopis went to Krishna in the dead of the night, they certainly feared chastisement by their relatives, their husbands, brothers, and fathers. But nonetheless, not caring for their relatives, they went to Krishna. There was certainly fear, but this fear could not check their devotional service to Krishna. One should not mistakenly think Lord Krishna must be worshipped by an inimical attitude like that of Shishupala. The injunction is anukulyena grahanam pratikulyasya varjanam. One should give up unfavorable activities and accept only favorable conditions in devotional service. Generally, if one blasphemes the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is punished. As the Lord says in Gita 16:19, Tanaham vishtakruran samsareshu naradhaman kshipyam ajashrama shubhan asurishva eva yonishu. There are many such injunctions. One should not try to worship Krishna unfavorably. Otherwise, he must be punished, at least for one life to be purified, as one should not try to be killed by embracing an enemy, a tiger or a snake. One should not blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead and become his enemy in order to be put into hellish life. The purpose of this verse is to emphasize that even the enemy of the Lord can be delivered, not to speak of his friend. Srila Madhvacharya also says in many ways that one should not blaspheme Lord Vishnu through one's mind, words, or actions, for a blasphemer will go to hellish life along with his forefathers. Karmana manasa vacha yodvishad vishnumavvyayam majjanti pitarastasya narake shashvati sama. Bhagavad Gita 16:19 and 20 verse, the Lord says, Tanaham dvishta kruran samsareshu naradaman Kshipyamajashrama shubhan asurishva eva yonishu asurim yonimapanna mudha janmani janmani mam aprapyaiva kaunteya tato yantyadhamam gatim. We did this, right? The same verse again. Prabhupada quotes another time, right? Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, are cast by me into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Attaining repeated birth among the species of demoniac life, such persons can never approach me. Gradually, they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. One who blasphemes the Lord is put into family of asuras, in which there is every chance of forgetting the service of the Lord. Lord Krishna further states in Bhagavad Gita 9:11 and 12. Avajananti mamuda manushim tanumashritam param bhavam ajananto mam bhutamaheshwaram. Mudas, rascals, blaspheme the Supreme Lord because he appears exactly like a human being. They do not know the unlimited opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Moghasha mogha karmano mogha jnana vichetasaha rakshasim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinim shrita. anything done by those who have taken the attitude of enemies will be baffled. Mogha Saha, if these enemies try to be liberated or merged into the existence of Brahman, if they desire to be elevated to the higher planetary systems as karmis, or even if they desire to return home back to Godhead, they will certainly be baffled. As for Hiranyakashipu, although he was extremely inimical toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he always thought of his son who was a great devotee. Therefore, by the grace of his son, Prahlad Maharaj, Hiranyakashipu was also delivered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is an important answer to when the question comes, how Hiranyakashipu was delivered, although he is inimical because of his son. He was able to think of the devotee son. Hiranyakashipuschapi Bhagavan Nindayatama Vivakshur Atyagata Shuno Prahaladasyanubhavata. The conclusion is that one should not give up pure devotional service. For one's own benefit, one should not imitate Hiranyakashipu or Shishupala. This is not the way to achieve success. Sometimes people say, oh, why Krishna is doing this? Why? We should be very careful to not do that. Krishna is our friend. And whenever somebody says, why Krishna allowed that? We should defend Krishna and say, no, Krishna is doing the best. We need to just align our mind and understand that when the right time comes, things will take thing and we should defend Krishna. I learned that from Savitri Mataji. You want to comment?
Yes, here we see Narada Muni is, you almost see a tension between Narada Muni and Srila Prabhupada here, because Narada Muni is saying that by any form of absorption, the result is the same. But the Srila Prabhupada spent the whole purport, and it's a long purport, with quotes from different sources, saying that no, we should not blaspheme the Lord. So sometimes the scriptures, the Shastra emphasize something, but we shouldn't take it literally. In other words, yes, because Krishna is absolute and Narada Muni is glorifying the absolute nature of the Lord and the glory, in one sense, of being absorbed in the Lord, then in one sense it's the same, but it's not to be practiced or to be imitated. Just like in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a verse basically saying that you don't need initiation. The holy name is that much powerful, you don't need initiation. But then Srila Prabhupada spends the whole purport, and possibly is the longest purport in all the books, in which he says, now you need initiation. So we need to be careful, and this is the Bhagavatam for the independently thoughtful. We need to be careful not to be locked ourselves in an understanding which is presented in a particular context to emphasize a particular principle. So here, Narada Muni is emphasizing a particular principle. Even more in the next verse we will see. So he's glorifying absorption in any form. But for us, it's not something to be followed. Just like we hear nectar of devotion, we hear that there are 9 forms of devotional service, and but just focusing on one, we can reach perfection. And it's true, because the power is there. At the same time, obviously, we cannot say just do garland for the deities without, say, chanting our rounds. Or, I mean, if we are in this line from Srila Prabhupada gave us a well-rounded program of engagements. So it's true that one of the 9 items is sufficient because it has got the potency. But
basics has to be.
But for us, obviously, we need more of a well-rounded program. Sometimes there's a story in Srirangam how those fish became liberated because Manuja, someone. Well, you know the story? Anyway, there is a story where some great devotee put some prasad in a pool of water, there is some fish they eat, and they see them going to Vaikuntha directly. So the potency of prasad is there, but we cannot just say, okay, I took prasada today. That's enough for my devotional service.
Yeah, because like you were, like for example, an ant, if we give a little speck, it is satisfied with it and it can have a whole party and feed the whole family and be happy. But one speck is not going to be enough for us. So same thing with devotional service as well. We have all this complicated mind and we have our senses and we have our intelligence, we have desires and needs. And if we don't engage adequately, properly, it's not going to nourish us. So all the different elements have to be taken care of. Like Prabhu said, like a holistic approach to devotional service. Any questions, comments? You can unmute and just ask if you. Anybody? Okay, we'll go to the next verse. Really like that point that Hiranyakashipu was thinking of Prahlad all the time and that was liberating. So when we're thinking about a devotee, liberates us.
But even then, Srila Prabhupada says that there, at the same time, we also know he's personally killed by the Lord. Not only that, but we also know that Hiranyakashipu is Jai and Vijay, like this canto is basically is a central figure of the whole canto. So sometimes the acharyas and Srila Prabhupada may emphasize one element of all the elements of all the factors. But we cannot just say, oh, Srila Prabhupada said like that, therefore it is like that. Yes, it is like that, but there are also other aspects to consider. Because the nature of communication is that you may not say always everything at the same time. You speak about a particular aspect, you emphasize a particular aspect. Just like Srila Prabhupada sometimes emphasizes, say, cow protection, sometimes book distribution, sometimes distribution of prasad, sometimes chanting the holy name, sometimes studying the holy name. And he may emphasize it strongly, but we shouldn't forget that, yeah, the other aspects are also there.
I think we have a question. This is Nehavati Andarbeka. I really like the point that Prabhu mentioned, how not to restrict ourselves within some particular point mentioned in the scripture without understanding its context. Yatha vairānubandena martyastanmayatam yat na tatha bhakti yogena iti me nishchitam Narada Muni continued, by devotional service, one cannot achieve such intense absorption in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as one can through enmity toward him. That is my opinion. Purport. Sriman Narada Muni, the topmost pure devotee, praises Krishna's enemies like Shishupala because their minds are always completely absorbed in Krishna. Indeed, he thinks himself deficient in the inspiration of being feelingly absorbed in Krishna consciousness. This does not mean, however, that the enemies of Krishna are more elevated than Krishna's pure devotees. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 5205, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also thinks of himself in such a humble way. Jagai Madai Haite Muni Sa Papishta Puri Shera Kita Haite Muni Se Ragistita. I am a worse sinner than Jagai and Madai. I am even lower than the worms in the stool. A pure devotee always thinks himself more deficient than everyone else. If a devotee approaches Srimati Radharani to offer some service to Krishna, even Srimati Radharani thinks that the devotee is greater than she. As Narad Muni says that according to this opinion, the enemies of Krishna are better situated because they're fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna in terms of killing him, just as a very lusty man always thinks of women and their association. The essential point in this connection is that one should be fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna 24 hours a day. There are many devotees in Raga Marga, which is exhibited in Vrindavan, whether in Dasya Rasa, Sakhya Rasa, Vatsalya Rasa, or Madhurya Rasa. All the are always overwhelmed by thoughts of Krishna. When Krishna is away from Vrindavan tending the cows in the forest, the gopis in the Madhurya Rasa are always absorbed in thoughts of how Krishna walks in the forest. The soles of his feet are so soft that the gopis would not dare to keep his lotus feet on their soft breasts. Indeed, they consider their breasts a very hard place for the lotus feet of Krishna. Yet those lotus feet wander in the forest, which is full of thorny plants. The gopis are absorbed in such thoughts at home, although Krishna is away from them. Similarly, when Krishna plays with his young friends, Mother Yashoda is very much disturbed by thoughts that Krishna, because of always playing and not taking his food properly, must be getting weak. These are the examples of the exalted ecstasy felt in Krishna's service as manifested in Vrindavan. This service is indirectly praised by Narada Muni in this verse. Especially for the conditioned soul, Narada Muni recommends that one somehow or other be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, for that will save one from all the dangers of material existence. Full absorption in thought of Krishna is the highest platform of Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah, as you can see, this is continuing the same mode, glorifying the absorption of Krishna. And here we see also the humility of Narada Muni. He is thinking that the demons are better than him because he sees them as more, one sense, more intensely absorbed. See, Narada Muni is a particular personality in Vedic culture, is respected even by the demons because the demons do not feel threatened by him. He knows he's a sadhu, he knows he's sannyasis, he just literally flies around, he appears, he disappears. And so even comes up, he honors him, he receives him, he asks him things about the future. So he knows demons. For him, it's not a theoretical thing like we read in the books. Okay, this is Kamsa, this is Hiranyakashipu, and so on. But he knows these people personally. Like, say, we read about political leaders, say Trump or Putin. But there are people who actually know these people. They speak with them. They spend hours in the meeting, in the chambers, and so on. So Narada Muni is in that category. He knows these people personally. He's been to see them, so he knows how intense is their hatred for Krishna.
Mm.
It's not just a theoretical exercise for him. He knows these people, and but in his humility, Srila Prabhupada gives the example of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. He says, "I'm lower than Jagai Madai." So he feels, wow, these people are really absurd. Krishna, such intensity is even better than mine. But it's his humility, almost.
Such a Vaikuntha mentality, right? When if we can treat each other in that way, there will be no fights, no misunderstandings, and everything can be. But what to do if we're surrounded by those who have the opposite? Everybody is competing and everybody's trying to make us feel that you're less. What to do when we're in that kind of opposite situation?
Well, first of all, we should choose our association. And
not associate with envious people.
Yeah, of course. There's a very intriguing and terrifying verse. Quote. A couple of days ago, I sent it to a senior Srila Prabhupada disciple because I asked him, "What do you think? What Srila Prabhupada think about? Thinking about when he wrote this." And this is from Madhya Lila, chapter 1, text number 18. And Srila Prabhupada says, a mundane person in the dress of a Vaishnava should not be respected but rejected. This is enjoined in the Shastra, Upeksha. The word upeksha means neglect. One should neglect an envious person.
Mhm.
A preacher's duty is to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead, make friendship with Vaishnavas, show mercy to the innocent, and reject or neglect those who are envious or jealous. And this is the sentence I was coming to, which I found very intriguing and terrifying at the same time. There are many jealous people in the dress of Vaishnavas in this Krishna consciousness movement, and they should be completely neglected. That's why I wrote to this devotee said, what do you think about what Srila Prabhupada was thinking? Because he's not talking about envious people out there. Obviously, we all have experience that people don't like devotional life, they don't like devotees, they don't like the message of Krishna consciousness. And of course, we understand we just avoid them as much as possible. But here it says there are these jealous people in the dress of Vaishnavas in the movement, and they should be completely neglected. So now, without becoming paranoid, we know by experience that there are devotees who are very toxic. And when you go there, and they just start vomiting offenses and insults and negativities, and for them everything is collapsing, everything is corrupt.
Apocalyptic.
Yes, everything is a catastrophe, but even more, it's an ethical and moral catastrophe. Everybody's is bad, from the GBC down to the ABC, the gurus are false, the GBC are totally.
It's the internet. You don't have to even go to them personally. Association can also mean Facebook.
Of
Having
course.
friends or people who are every day criticizing, always in that mood of tamaguna.
Yeah, and not only on the institutional level, sometimes just on a local level. They start talking, there's all this Prabhu is like this Prabhu that.
Oh, yeah, that's also.
So we should just avoid, just they're not good. Life is short. We can't waste time with this type of people.
Yeah, be happy.
Second, if we happen to be, we just can't avoid it because we are in the same room or some meeting, we should try to stir the dialogue towards a more positive dimension. So, like, we have sometimes we have to interact for whatever reason for service. Say we do service at the same time, same place. And the person starts blah, 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 and this and that, and the other thing, and then these people bad, and then blah, 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 blah. And then we could say, hey, can we just read this from Bhagavad Gita? We discuss that. Let's pick up any book. Let's have a dialogue on that. So avoid, but sometimes you cannot avoid. Then you try to stir the discussion on a more positive and productive ground.
And I just want to add also that there's an internal perspective to this situation, as Srimad Bhagavatam says, Gunadamat anukroshan gunadikan mudam lipset. So when we find somebody doing something wrong and having a mentality of not nice devotees, maybe they're envious or maybe they are ignorant and they're speaking nonsense. So one thing is, like, externally, we either leave the place or we try to lead, but most important thing is internally to not build resentment, to not hate the person. Because Bhagavatam says, Anukroshan, if they're less than us, we become compassionate. This person don't know what they're talking about. Don't take it to the heart. Leave it. Even if they're offending us, leave it. Ignore it. Become indifferent. But gunadikan mudam lipset. Sometimes we'll find devotees, really happens. Sometimes we see somebody, they have a better quality than us. They may not be superior in all ways, but in something, they may sing very nicely, or they may speak very nicely, or they may dress very nicely, whatever it is. They do a particular service nicely. And then we see other aspects of them which is not so nice. And the mind says, put them down in front of others. No? Or like, even in our own minds. No, Bhagavatam says if they have even a little bit of better quality than us, we appreciate. We appreciate. And we in our minds, we honor that person is superior to me in this regard. We just accept that. The person did something better and therefore they have something better than me. Accept it. So Bhagavatam gives us only two ways. Either we make peace by being compassionate, or we make peace by accepting that we are less than them and they're superior. There's no harm in that. It's okay. It's okay to feel that we have a less qualified existence than theirs in that regard. No, I mean, I'm learning this point, and it's very, very useful verse from Bhagavatam that helps me. That's what Prabhu read from Bhagavatam. I don't know if it's the purport to that one, but he read it from Chaitanya Charitamrita, but this verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the same principle. Okay, we continue. We'll go to the next verse. Any questions, my dear friends? Gita-pesha kritarudha Ujjayam tamanusmaran Samrama bhaya yogena Samrambha bhaya yogena Vindate tatsvarupatam Evam Krishne bhagavati Maya manuja ishvare Vairena puta pap Manas tamapur anuchintaya. A grassworm confined in a hole of a wall by a bee always thinks of the bee in fear and enmity and later becomes a bee, simply because of such remembrance. Similarly, if the conditioned soul remembers, conditioned soul somehow or other thinks of Krishna, who is Sachidananda Vigraha, they will become free from their sins. Whether thinking of him as worshipable Lord or an enemy, because of constantly thinking of him, they will regain their spiritual bodies. Bhagavad Gita 4:10, the Lord says, Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mam upashrita bhavo jnana tapasa utamad bhavamagataha. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. There are two ways of constantly thinking of Krishna, as a devotee and as an enemy. A devotee, of course, by his knowledge and tapasya becomes free from fear and anger and becomes a pure devotee. Similarly, an enemy, although thinking of Krishna inimically, thinks of him constantly and also becomes purified. This is confirmed elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita 9:30, where the Lord says, Apichet suduracharo bhajate mamananya bhak sadhureva samantavya samyoga vyavastito hisa. Even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he engages in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. A devotee undoubtedly worships the Lord with rapt attention. Similarly, if an enemy, Sudurachara, always thinks of Krishna, he also becomes a purified devotee. The example given here concerns the grass worm that becomes bee-like because of constantly thinking of the bee that forces it to enter a hole. By always thinking of the bee in fear, the grass worm starts to become a bee. This is a practical example. Lord Krishna appears within this material world for two purposes. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam, to protect the devotees and annihilate the demons. The sadhus and devotees certainly think of the Lord always, but dushkriti is the demon like Kamsa and Shishupala also think of Krishna in terms of killing him. By thinking of Krishna, both the demons and devotees attain liberation from the clutches of Maya. Sometimes I've seen like devotee parents who become very angry that the child became a devotee. They keep cursing Krishna so much that ultimately they become better devotees than the children because they're constantly thinking of Krishna and the devotees. This verse uses the word Maya Manuje when Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in his original spiritual potency, Sambhavamyatma Mayaya Mayaya. He's not forced to accept a form made by material nature. Therefore, the Lord is addressed as Ishvara, the controller of Maya. He's not controlled by Maya. When a demon continuously thinks of Krishna because of enmity toward him, he's certainly freed from the sinful reactions of his life. To think of Krishna in any way in terms of his name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, or anything pertaining to him is beneficial for everyone. Shrannantam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. Thinking of Krishna, hearing the holy name of Krishna, or hearing the pastimes of Krishna will make one pure. And then he will become a devotee. Our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore trying to introduce a system of somehow or other letting everyone hear the holy name of Krishna and take Krishna's prasad. Thus, one will gradually become a devotee and his life will be successful. I remembered another story of the Puranas. There were two parrots, and one was given to a Brahmana, nice devotee, and the other was given to a thief and a murderer. And both the parrots later on, they grew up to become exactly like their trainers. So the devotee who stayed, the parrot which stayed with the murderer and the thief started to use really bad words. Kill him, beat him, smash him. All bad words the parrot was saying. And then the parrot which went with the good devotee was always like, oh, how are you? Can we offer you a glass of water? How are you doing today? Did you remember Krishna today? Always nice things that the parrot was speaking. So our mind is like that parrot. Whoever we associate with, we'll develop that same mentality. And Sudurachara, like the bee, like, right? Like Prabhupada says, grasp one that becomes like bee. There's another story that came to my mind as we were reading this.
Chat.
Yes. Okay, there's a comment or a question. Okay, it's a question. Very honestly, my mind has a tendency to point out only the wrong thing in the other person and completely overshadow the good qualities in the person. How to practically overcome this tendency? I also have that question.
Well, first of all, you're already doing the first step, that you are recognizing it. See, first step in solving a problem is always recognizing that there is a problem. So you are recognizing that, oh, there's a problem, because some people don't even recognize that. They think that, no, that's the bhakti, that's a devotional service, to just put down everybody to fault finding constantly, that they don't even, and they have their own rationalizations and their own explanations. But you see it as a problem, so it's already one step. Now, how you solve the problem? Well, you keep recognizing it, and you keep trying to prevent it or divert it. It's just like chanting the holy names, japa. The mind goes somewhere else, but you know that, no, I need to bring it back to the holy name. So when the mind, which is pretty natural, goes to negativity, oh, the devotee did this, did that to me, and this and that. No, the mind is your instrument ultimately. You're not the mind, you're the controller of the mind, or you should be the controller of the mind. So you bring the mind to appreciate the devotee. The intelligence should discriminate and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm just bringing so much toxicity, so much negativity, I'm poisoning myself. And for what? For nothing. Again, nothing. Instead, if I see the positive aspects of the devotee, I'll be purified. And every devotee has done things which are positive. I remember there's a story, was a cook in the Gaudiya Math at the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and somehow it seems that he really had a bad character. Okay, it just, I mean, it was really tough to deal with him. And somehow he left his body at one point, and the ladies were sitting somewhere and kind of relief, like, wow, the guy's gone, because everybody was either intimidated or irritated or disturbed by him. So then they were there kind of saying all these negative things. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur entered the room, he was tall, imposing, very authoritative. And he said, he always had a clean dhoti. And he left. So he stressed something good, and people had to recognize, yeah, he had this value of cleanliness, and he would not compromise on that principle of cleanliness. So by saying that, he was stressing, think of the positive. So it's a practice. It's a practice, and you'll see one thing. The beauty of this practice is that you'll feel more happy in your heart. It's not just an austerity that, I shouldn't say or think anything negative. No, when you think positive, you yourself you come to smile, come to peace, come to nourishment. So you'll feel better. So try the two things and see what works better for you.
Yeah, I remember there is one lady, she's an author. She's not a Hare Krishna devotee or anything, but she's a very God conscious person. And I remember reading some of her book and watching some class. And then there was this tendency in my head, like, yeah, but she's not a devotee. Yeah, but she's not a devotee. And then at one point she said, you should pray for the person that you're feeling, like, for example, if I feel, oh, that person is doing this and that, which is not right, or finding something which is wrong, right? And then she said, you should pray for that person. And you should pray, let this person find all prosperity and happiness, and let this person find, like, let's say somebody has something that you don't have. And then you actually pray, let them have more of that. And like, whoa, I was like, how can I pray like that? But then I found in Srimad Bhagavatam, it said the same thing. That's the mentality of a devotee. When we can pray for the other person, even if they took something from us, we pray for that person, let them be happy, let them progress more than me. That's a devotee. And then Lord will be so pleased, Radharani will be so pleased. And then that's the mood of her. Radharani is like that. She's a mother who's always saying, Krishna, here is a nice devotee. She's better than me. Please accept the service. When we approach her in that humility mood, then she's able to do that. So we go to Krishna and Radha and say, this devotee is having this problem. Please bless them. Like, let's say we see that somebody is always lying or something. We pray for that person. Krishna, please make this person find happiness and let this person flourish, find good friends. And usually the tendency is this person is always lying. They'll never find good friends. Immediately twist, like change that and pray in the opposite way. If my mind says this person is never going to find good friends, I say, Krishna, please let this person find amazing friends that will help them, let them advance in Krishna consciousness, let them be happy, let them find, wow, that's going to be so purifying. In the beginning, it's going to be a little artificial to push and force ourselves, but eventually to become a habit. And I learned a lot from Kantya Prabhu. He's naturally like, he's always praying. I remember there was one devotee who was so much threatening and attacks, and that devotee even, I was instrumental in banning him, and it's like that. And then one day I asked him a question, because he never speaks negatively, even if people are hurting him. And then he said something like, oh, I really wish for this devotee to go back to Godhead in this lifetime only. And I was like, wow. Because usually people are like, this person will never make it back to Godhead, they don't know what they're doing. On theory, on principle, he was disagreeing. And another devotee also, I remember he and this god brother, they always have arguments. But both of them have the mentality like, no, that's an issue-based thing. I wish well for that person. I want them to go back to Godhead. Krishna can probably forgive them, even though they're making really bad mistakes. Krishna can forgive them. That's what happens by chanting the holy name. That's what transformation of heart happens. Wow, it's amazing. And I've watched it, like real life. Yes, there is. Oh, yes. Thank you. Snehavati is bringing up the Japatak Maharaj always prays for devotees. It's a very, he actually said that one of his strengths comes from that, like he prays for others. And this is Gokul Leela from New Zealand. She says, is it that praying for the other devotee, it will remove this resentment we hold in the heart when we see the issues of another devotee? Yes, it's part of that, but it does more than that. It gets the attention of Krishna. Because when we are in darkness and when we are in negativity, Krishna, okay, this person is, but when we pray for that person, then Krishna immediately, I'm telling you, this is practical. When you pray for somebody, that prayer gets answered faster. And you also become, the other person can also pray for you. You become a person that people can pray for. And yeah, the resentment, I mean, it takes more than that to get rid of resentment. It needs journaling, it needs outreaching with devotees, it needs talking to mentors, whatever it takes. But it's not that just by praying it will go away, but yes, eventually it will go away by praying. I think it's more a challenge for women. I think men are a little bit more like, oh, okay, that person, and that's it. But when we pray for the other person, then we take that insignificant position. We know that I belong qualitatively, I'm Krishna's, and then quantitatively, I know I'm insignificant, but then I'm able to pray for the other person. That's the nirmatsaranam, non-invasiveness. I'm not sure if that helped you, but yes, it will remove eventually, but it takes more than that, other things as well. Thank you, Gokulila. Okay, we have another question from Kulavati Krishnapriya. How to cope with the situation when someone looks at me as good as a devotee and expects so much, but I'm not able to keep up with their expectation? Should I ask them to pray for me? Oh, the other side of the situation? Well, it depends who the person is. If they think that if they look at you in that way, it means you're capable of it. And you can pray for that devotee also, that may they find the strength to accept you. Because, this whole thing of please pray for me has become a little bit of everybody wants others to pray for us, but we don't want to pray for others. We're all so much focused on ourselves. So it's important. The theme today is like you praying for others. Maybe there is an expectation that you want the other person to accept you, but maybe the lesson here is that you pray for that person's benefit. And if they are well situated and they are expecting something from you, it may be something that you need to work on. But the point is to pray for the other person. You can ask, but again, it should be really coming from a sincere point of working on yourself. Yeah, you can pray that Krishna accepts you. The fact is Krishna accepts you, but why do you want this particular devotee to accept you? What is the goal? If it's really pleasing Krishna, there's nothing to worry. You keep working on yourself. But if it's because we want the person to like us, then it may be in the mode of passion. So we must look at our actual intention of why we want to be liked by someone. Yeah, so there has to be a balance of working on ourselves, at the same time also not taking ourselves away from the center and putting Krishna in the center. The point is not whether we are liked by someone. The point is not that somebody is expecting something. The point is, are we doing our best? So the goal should be, am I trying to please Krishna? And if we're feeling dissatisfied, there may be something we need to work on. If we're feeling that, no, I've done my best, and if the people are unable to, and if their expectations is a lot, we don't feel disturbed. But if we're feeling disturbed, there may be something to look into. You want to comment something?
Yes, see, the question starts with saying, someone looks at me as a good devotee. Now, have you been cultivating that impression? By being even imposing that impression on this person? I'm saying this because, especially in India or in the Indian diaspora, I see this very peculiar dynamics that people impose themselves on others as their shiksha gurus. You got a young brahmachari dealing with a bunch of married girls, and everybody sees this girl, see him as the shiksha guru. I mean, it seems not to even recognize that he shouldn't even be cultivating them as a brahmachari. But in general, besides brahmachari or married girls or anybody, somebody just because it's a Bhakti Viksha leader or because it's a temple president or any other administrative thing or so senior joined a few years before, sometimes people impose these labels on themselves, but they impose on others. And then they say, no, I'm your shiksha guru. And so we have so many quote unquote shiksha gurus. And sometimes it's a totally artificial thing. Shiksha guru is a big deal. Shiksha guru and diksha guru are non-different. And in fact, it says, should probably explain, generally the one who instructs the disciple becomes also the initiator guru. So in ISKCON, especially in India, I've seen an inflation of this Shiksha Guru thing. Anybody who is a little bit of a chieftain, a little bit of a boss, or some sort of, I mean, even a benevolent guide, I'm not saying in a negative way only, but whoever has a little bit of a pastoral role is a Shiksha Guru. And it kind of imposes on everybody else that he or she is their teacher.
And we expect them to be perfect and with no flaws and faults.
Not only that, I'm just saying, if we impose on others an idea of ourselves, then obviously you also create some expectations. Because if I'm talking, if it's hypothetical, right? If you create the impression, especially artificially, that you're the Shiksha Guru, then of course they'll expect more things from you. Then you say, look, I'm not just like you, but I started a few years ago. A few years before you, I know a little things more. I read a little bit more of you, and maybe I chanted a little more rounds than you. And okay, I started the process a little earlier, so I have a little more experience. But what's a big difference? So we need to be very, very careful, because obviously if we create artificial expectations, then it will be a very, very great anxiety to try to fulfill the expectation. We have to create masks and bigger masks and bigger masks, and this masks weight, and we have to carry this mask always around instead of being normal and say, okay, I have a little more experience, I give you a little more guidance, because I heard more lectures, but I'm not some different tattva. It's like you are Jiva tattva and Guru tattva or something. Sometimes we create these artificial dichotomies.
Yeah, and then that also kind of causes us to, like for example, somebody wants to be treated nicely, but then they don't behave in a non-envious, accepting way. Like I want to be treated as a senior devotee, but then I'm not accepting, or I'm causing some problem. Yeah, I think it's two sides also.
I remember, I did with congregational development. There was a country, the whole country was like the rule. If you join in that country, and there were thousands of devotees, the whole country, this couple is your Shiksha Guru, because they were the first ones in the country, and they did obviously some very important services there. I'm not discounting them, but it's like even sometimes talking with devotees, they say Mataji, and I ask which Mataji, because there are thousands of them. Say no, Mataji. Oh, the Mataji means the one Mataji, the one and only. When you say Mataji, is that Mataji? Okay, the Mataji, and so on. And so this devotee, and this I said with a sad heart, okay. But this devotee was the Shiksha Guru, automatic Shiksha Guru. You join there, he's Shiksha Guru, everybody, and then he had some very miserable problems. They found him. He was sending some very vulgar or very obscene, inappropriate things to some young girl, 16, 17-year-old girl. It must have been a type of mental breakdown.
You know why? Because also those Shiksha Gurus, everybody starts expecting them to be gods.
No, but you don't start sending obscene things.
I know. I'm just saying the person went mad, probably.
Yeah, some ghost, some pressure, some offense. I don't know. But I'm just saying, it was very sad. It was very, very, very sad to see a person who was so respected by everyone as the Shiksha Guru of everyone, institutionally, like he is the Shiksha Guru of everyone. And then if have very, very, very miserable problems, very strange problems. I wanted to say something else back to this concept of intensity. You see, this is interesting, because just like we cannot practice insulting the Lord or insulting the devotees, at the same time, that intensity is a sign of deep connection with Krishna consciousness. And I've seen throughout the years, sometimes people who are not inimical, they are the kind of the real non-devotees. I give an example, and I hope she's not listening. My sister, okay. So when I joined the movement, she was 10-year-old, and now she's 53. So for the vast majority of her life, she has been in touch with Krishna consciousness. She has been to Mayapur. She has been to Vrindavan. She has been to Puri. She has been in a number of ISKCON temples in India. She has been in multiple ISKCON temples in Europe. And once she did
Don't give too much information.
huh?
Don't give too much information.
Oh, but my sister.
Yeah, one of the sisters. Don't give me.
One of the sisters. Okay, one of the sisters. Once she did a personal service for Jagtak Maharaj, she needed some travel assistance, very complex. She helped. And in 43 years, she never criticized anything. She never criticized the philosophy. She never debated. She never said anything. And personally, and she always helped me. If she could help me, she could always help me in different ways. So she was always, but I consider philosophically her as like the perfect non-devotee because she couldn't care less.
Yeah.
In 43 years, she never expressed anything signifying attraction and anything signifying repulsion. But I've seen what I've seen in other cases, people who manifested intense repulsion, they became actually devotees.
Super dedicated, because in how it can be, how I can surrender to Krishna? No way, Krishna. How can they study and say, no, they find faults in it and everything. But when they become devotees, they become very staunch. They become very fixed. Because as he says, the intensity, it's emotions. Emotions will put us, when we are emotionally agitated about Krishna, when we become emotionally attached to Krishna, imagine what kind of a beautiful lotus it will bloom. I've seen that with even like generally people. Yeah.
This devotee was at one point quite famous, Madhu Mangala. He was always with Satsarup Maharaj. He was, I believe, his disciple, and he was his secretary. So they were always together traveling. And he, at one point in the late 70s, he was a punk. He had this spike hair and everything. And the first time he saw the devotees in Harinam, it just attacked them and started kicking them. It just hated the devotees. It just started kicking with big boots, big punk boots. And then he was super soft, super sweet, super soft, super tender type of person. But when he had this type of reaction, I remember once I was in Gita Nagari in Pennsylvania, and there was different initiations, and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was giving an initiation, and he was initiating a girl, a young woman, and he told the story that everybody became devotee. The father, the mother, the brother, they were all devotees initiated. But once she came to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and she said, "Look, you will never get me." And Maharaj said, at that time, I knew she would become devotee.
She did, yeah.
And she was there at the initiation, taking initiation. Maharaj told the story. So because there are different reasons. One is the intensity. Intensity means there is a connection, whatever type of connection, but it's an absolute connection. It's Krishna is absolute. Whatever connection you have, it's absolute, meaning it is purifying. And also, sometimes there may be some reverberation of previous lives that we had maybe problems with Krishna consciousness, with the devotees, with the practice. And in this life, that feels other people don't have that. Other people don't have that, and so they don't have, in one sense, any reason to be angry. But sometimes devotees, they may have some very bad experience from previous lives, and in this life they have this intensity. So there is both the bhakti and the intensity, and then it manifests as great hostility, but then it manifests as surrender.
That's actually Jaya Vijaya's case in each of these incarnations, that intensity of hatred towards Krishna and enmity towards Krishna, but actually it's deep. separation from Krishna. Yeah, we're on time. So thank you very much. If you have any questions,
Yeah, thank
do
you.
let us know. And thank you so much for joining. It gives me enthusiasm and encouragement to study these subjects more and make topics. So this evening for our Gita connection, we'll speak more about this point.
And so tomorrow, Krishna will we continue. Narada Muni has got more verses to go, explaining these points, elaborating on these points.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you everybody for attending. Hare Krishna.